All right, let's dive right into this. Ever stop and wonder why we can't all just have everything we want? I mean, it seems like a simple question, right? But the answer is, well, it's complicated, and it gets to the very heart of how our societies are put together.
I mean, just think about it for a second. If there was an infinite supply of everything, food, houses, you name it, would we even need money, or jobs, or these huge complex systems to figure out who gets what? The answer is probably no, right?
A great way to picture a world like that is the old story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In that story, everything was super abundant. There was no struggle, no need to produce or plan anything. The whole idea of an economy would have been totally pointless. But of course, that's not the world we live in.
And the difference between that world and ours boils down to one single, incredibly powerful concept: scarcity. This is the big one, folks. Scarcity is the fundamental problem. We have seemingly unlimited human wants, but we live in a world with very limited resources. It's the reason we have to make choices, and it's the entire reason economic systems exist in the first place.
So the moment scarcity enters the picture, everything changes. Every single society, and I mean every society, has to come up with some kind of organized way to make those tough choices. And that organized method, that's its economic system. Its whole job is to answer 4 fundamental questions.
It doesn't matter if you're talking about a small tribe or global superpower. The system they use, whether it's capitalism, socialism, or something in between, is just their framework for tackling these same 4 problems.
First up, the most central question of all. What do we do with our resources?
So, because things like land, labor, and capital are limited, you have to decide what to make. It's all about trade-offs. Should we use this field for rice or for wheat? Do we invest in building more cars or more hospitals? The system has to answer, what are we going to produce, how are we going to produce it, and, maybe most importantly, who is all this stuff for?
And that leads us directly into question number 2, which is all about the distribution of income.
Okay, so once all that stuff is produced, who actually gets to enjoy it? This is a huge one. Capitalism generally answers that what you get is based on your contribution and the forces of the market. Socialism, on the other hand, comes at it from a different angle. It emphasizes equality and tries to distribute things based on need. You can see right away these are 2 very different answers to the same basic question.
Which brings us to the third core problem every single economic system has to solve: maintaining stability.
You know, economies aren't just a straight line up. They have ups and downs. So how does the system handle a recession? What's the plan for runaway inflation or really high unemployment? Any system worth its salt needs some kind of mechanism to weather these economic storms that are, let's be honest, pretty much inevitable.
And finally, the 4th big question looks to the future. This is the challenge of economic growth.
A society doesn't just want to survive, right? It wants to thrive. It wants to do better. So how does the system invest in technology, infrastructure, and capital to actually improve living standards for the next generation? It has to have a plan for progress baked right in.
So how do the big isms we hear about, capitalism, communism, try to answer these questions? Well, a really helpful way to understand their differences is to look at them through a historical lens, using the Marxist classification of how societies evolve based on how they organize production.
According to this theory, history moves through these distinct stages. It starts with primitive communalism, where there's basically no private ownership. Then comes slavery, which introduces class divisions. That's followed by feudalism, based on land ownership by lords. And then we get to capitalism, which is defined by private ownership of capital and wage labor. The theory then suggests a future move towards socialism, and ultimately to a classless, stateless communist society.
Now, a core critique of capitalism within this framework is this idea of surplus value. Let me break it down. A worker produces a certain amount of value through their labor. They're paid a wage, but, and this is the key part, the value they create is more than what they're paid. That leftover value, that extra bit, that's called surplus value. And according to this theory, this becomes the profit for the owner of the capital.
This chart here really gets to the core differences and lays it all out. In capitalism, private individuals own the resources and make decisions based on the market. In socialism, the state or society as a whole owns the resources, and you have central planners making the big calls. Communism then imagines a future where the entire community owns and decides everything. You can see how the principle for distribution flows directly from who's in charge.
Okay, we've gone through a lot of theory, I know, but if you walk away with just 3 core ideas from this explainer, these are the ones that really matter.
First, and this is the absolute foundation of everything. That's it. Scarcity forces choice. This is the engine of all economics, period. Because we can't have everything, we must decide, and the system for making those decisions is what we call an economy.
Second key takeaway. Ownership determines class structure.
Who owns the means of production, the factories, the land, the capital, is what, according to this analysis, separates classes within a society. It's the fundamental dividing line.
And a third and final big idea is that the method of coordination is what really defines the system.
So, are millions of individual choices being coordinated through a decentralized market, or are decisions being made by a centralized planning authority? That fundamental difference, market versus planning, is what truly separates capitalism from socialism.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Those 4 fundamental questions, what to produce, how to distribute it, how to stay stable, and how to grow, they don't really change. They're timeless. But our world does. So the real question for us, looking forward, is this. As technology and resources continue to shift, how must our economic systems adapt to answer those same old questions in entirely new ways?